Let's get into it today. We're going to take a look at potentially where the market could rally into and what it's going to look like. So we'll break it all down for you guys. My name is Paul Barrett. Welcome back into Tech Path. I do want to thank our sponsor today. That's Coinbase. If you guys are brand new to crypto, this is a good place to start. So you can just visit coinbase.com. The future of money is here. You guys can do this both from a personal account, a business account. Very easy to set up. You guys can use our link down below. It does give you a little bit of a reward to get started, up to $200 in crypto to get moving. Today we've got a special guest. You guys will recognize the name and the person. Of course, that is Mr. Raoul Pal coming in from Real Vision. Great to see you, Raoul.
Great to see you, Paul. Good to be here.
Excellent. We're going to dive in a little bit of, first of all, let me kind of just let most of our audience, I think, probably recognize you and probably follow you quite a bit. But if you guys want to pick up Raoul, you can catch him over on Twitter right there at Raoul GMI. And of course, if you've not seen his business, Real Vision, go over to realvision.com. Check that out. We'll leave a link down below if you want to learn a little bit more about that. Let's get into a little bit about what happened this weekend. Obviously, we saw an absolute implosion within the Memecoin market. And you look at where Argentina and Javier Milei, of course, got involved in a little bit of a Memecoin drama. First of all, what was your first thought of this? Obviously, this rides on Solana. People are, somewhat almost getting into hate rage with what's happening on Solana in general. What's your opinion?
I kind of knew this one was coming. We'd heard rumors about it. Dave Portnoy as well. It's just been this endless cycle of people who are trying to capitalize in on this. Okay, fine. The issue being is that everybody's getting destroyed by this. Yeah. So if we go back to Memecoins 9 months ago, you could make some money. They would go from a low market cap and then maybe they go to $1 billion. And people had a real chance. And then more and more issuance came and more kind of insiders were part of it. And it just became this endless slew of new issuance, of which the people would get out after day 5 and then day 3 and then day 2 and then hour 5 and then hour 2 and then hour 1 and then 30 seconds after launch. So they've got faster and faster and faster and faster and more of them, that what we've done is erode all the opportunity out of the whole thing. And maybe that's the good thing. Maybe we've actually finally reached the bottom of this. And some memes will survive, because memes survive all of humanity. So Doge has lasted since 2013. Right. So some stuff will survive, but I think what we've done is hyperscaled this cycle, destroyed all of the excess gains that were possible, and that's hopefully the end of a lot of this. And we can then have a cleaner market.
Yeah. Do you think, Raoul, that people will kind of reset and look at, more of the blue chip altcoin group that mostly take up and have taken up previous bull runs in the past? If you look at the Solanas of the world, even Cardano, Avalanche, even if you look into scenarios like what we're seeing with SUI starting to make a move in this run, do you think that's what people will go back to, or do you think they are still looking for new stuff?
I think the difficult thing is most of these people are not us. So these are younger people with no chance of buying a property, who are seeing nothing but sort of a bleak financial future for themselves. So it's become this kind of financial nihilism, or to put it in a more positive term, it's a more speculative economy, because there are opportunities there and they need the opportunities to leverage. Mm-hmm. So they will always keep looking for the 50x, even though however often we tell them, listen, there's no such thing as consistent 50x returns. Really, if you're owning Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, SUI, whatever, you'll do fine. But that's not good enough for them. To have another 5 or 10x from there is not good enough for them. So they are looking for something. But I think you're right. The sense is that they will stop looking under this particular pile. Yes, they might find memes, whether it's Pepe or whether it's Doge or whatever, that survives and does well. But I'm not entirely convinced that meme coins will be the great attraction any longer.
This was kind of a scenario that has been brewing, I think, for a while. We've obviously seen the acceleration of it. Web3 gaming could have been compared to it in the previous run. We saw a lot of that around Metaverse and the launch of that, but not near the kind of scenario that's played out in terms of coin creation, which is the big problem that everybody's talking about right now.
Although we did see it, to be fair, Paul, we saw it in NFTs.
Well, that's a
right?
good point. Yeah, yeah.
We had this market of like high-end art that did really well, then the PFPs, and then there was millions of PFPs,
Yeah.
and the whole lot went to zero. And by the second cycle, we can see that punks retain value and Bored Apes retain value and Pudgy Penguins, but a whole bunch of them don't. So I think it's the right process. The creative destruction cycle in crypto is very fast and very brutal, and that's maybe a feature,
It's a
benefit.
feature, not a bug.
That's right. It's a feature, not a bug. I think probably.
Yeah. You've got a couple other things brewing right now. Avalanche has now flipped Solana in terms of tokenized real-world assets. This is including stablecoins on the ranking right there, and also the number of projects in RWAs that they've locked into. We've got some news breaking maybe in the next few days that Avalanche has done some more things around real-world assets. But when you look at RWAs in general and the potential for what they can mean to the market, how big are they in comparison to, maybe you look at gaming in the last run, or even to a certain extent DePIN and what we've seen around gaming in general? Is this an important category for you?
So it is a category. So how we create network value is either by number of active users, or it's also the total value transacted on a particular chain. That combination explains the value of these networks. So Bitcoin has big size transactions and a lot of users, which is why it's the most valuable. ETH has smaller size, but lots of users. And it all flows from that. So real world assets outside of stablecoins tend to be larger single transactions. If you're going to take a slice of a bond, or credit or something like that, it tends to be you stick in $100 million because you're a financial institution, and you don't do any more than that. So it's a high value, but only one or a few nodes in the network are using it. So yes, they're good, but they're not everything. So they add value. Gaming, on the other hand, much smaller values, gigantic volume size. So there is a balance between all of this. Now, over time, we will see the entire financial system go onto blockchain rails anyway. So it's not just the tokenization of real world assets, more so the hyper efficiency of putting equities, all bonds, everything on chain as an instant settlement system, proof of ownership, custody. You get rid of so many middlemen. So that's coming, and those markets are trillions upon trillions of dollars. So yeah, it is important. Gaming's important from another perspective, because that's one of the large communities of Web 2, social media being one, gaming being another, music being another, sports being another, that will eventually migrate across to this world. And all of those come with like 1 billion users plus.
Yeah.
I mean, a big game can have 1 billion users. A big pop star has 1 billion fans. A big sports team has 1 billion fans. So these are very big things.
So if you're looking at RWAs just in general, especially around the stance of Solana and Avalanche, are you picking one of those to be maybe one of the market leaders?
No, I mean, I know John Woo from Avalanche well. John's come out of the traditional finance space, the hedge fund space, like myself. They're very well positioned in real world assets. They've been working on this for a long time. But we've already seen Solana do some. ETH will obviously do a lot because it's kind of the proven one here. We know that SUI has been working with Franklin Templeton. So I think it'll get spread across. I actually think the real world asset majority will be in the EVM system, just because you don't get fired for it. You're not taking a risk. It's like having Microsoft go into any bank, any asset management firm. It's all Microsoft and not Apple. And the reason being, that's the easy decision to make. So Avalanche, I think, will continue to do this. They've got the other side of it as well, because they've got gaming as well. So they had the off the grid game, which is huge, which I think is very important.
Raoul, what do you make of the changes with Ethereum? You look at the gas right now, average gas price, probably the lowest, I think, maybe in a very, very long time. And you look at Vitalik speed running a lot of development, to try to lower gas in general. What do you make of this? Is it the right timing for Ethereum, especially in the market conditions as we are now?
So my view is Ethereum have overbuilt block space for current demand. So we've had layer 2s, we've cheapened the layer 1, so it's not accruing so much. Now, let's go to a forward for a world where 3 billion people are using blockchain and EVM's capturing a large share, right? It's now scaling massively because of layer 2s.
Yeah.
It's then generating enough income on the layer 1 that you're generating revenues across. We're just not there yet. So we can argue all day about the technicalities of what Vitalik and the Ethereum Foundation are doing. The reality is they're building something that's going to be massively scalable in due course, and differently so than some of the others like Solana. So while it feels that ETH is struggling, it's non-performant, it's not great, my guess is by the time the financial system steps in and starts building and they start using layer 2s to build and we start accruing value in the layer 1s using these reduced gas fees but much higher volumes because they're coming through from the layer 2s, I think it'll all work out fine.
And you look at, where ETH is right now. I know many people would probably say, well, they were a little bit late to the AI game, but I was looking at one of their YouTubes. This is in reference, I'll kind of zoom in on this for you. This is Agentic Ethereum, and these are all the different projects that have rolled out on this. I know your position on AI agents is a little bit maybe contrarian. How would you position that if you look at it on ETH? Would you still say a little less opportunity or a lot opportunity in the way of Ethereum?
So in the short term, what has been launched is basically testing of ideas and really ChatGPT wrappers plus rewrapped Telegram bots. Not that interesting. But obviously, Brian Armstrong was out on the tape again talking about this today, agents are going to use crypto payment rails. You need to pay an agent. If you think of an agent like somebody on Fiverr you go to make a deck for you or whatever it is, right? You have to pay them for their time. And including their time is their profit margin for their light and rent and living and stuff like that. With agents, you're going to pay for the compute and you're going to pay for the electricity.
Yeah.
And then maybe a profit margin if it's a private agent. So that really can only get done in crypto rails, because if you look at the speed of how ChatGPT does these things or any of these AIs, it's instantaneously. They'll get, we'll see it coming out soon where we will be using 10, 20, 30 different agents to do a simple task like booking an airline ticket, right? That actually has a lot of stops and booking your Uber to the airport, all of that stuff. So there'll be payments for all of this. I think EVM will do fine for payments on this stuff. On a layer 2 or something, because it needs to be performant. It needs to be fast, cheap. So yes, look, the longer term, this is a very, very, very big deal. There's only 8 billion humans, there's infinite AIs. And infinite AIs using infinite blockchain wallets equals, infinite market cap of crypto over time.
Let's jump over to what's happening with Doge and the US government. What's happening with Elon? Obviously, we've seen the performance so far. You look at the looming shutdown coming up here in March. Is this something that we should be worried about in the crypto market, or is this kind of a non-starter?
It's a non-starter because, as we all know, the US has trillions upon trillions of debt to roll over, as do the Chinese, as do the Japanese, as do the Europeans, as do the British, as do the Canadians. And they're going to have to bring rates lower and increase liquidity to do it.
Right.
And everybody knows liquidity is actually the largest driver of asset prices. So if we have a government shutdown, we will use what's known as the Treasury General Account, which is the US government checking account, and we will drain that. Now there's $800 billion in that, so that's plenty of liquidity to start with. And then if they run out of that, there's plenty of other forms of liquidity. So I think that over time, yes, Elon is trying to stall payments. They've laid people off, they've put people on freezes, all of this stuff. So you'll have less deficit spending. Okay, great. But we still have all the existing debt to roll. Sure. So what we have to do is roll that. So the liquidity has to come. So it's a good thing to do what they're trying to do. We can argue all day whether they're doing it in the right way and to the right things and whatever. Yeah. But generally speaking, to be braver in how you lower government spending when you've got this much debt is an intelligent thing to do. I don't believe there's a debt crisis that comes. I just believe it just gets monetized. And so as opposed to a whole debt blow up where everything goes down 90%, we
Right.
go from a debasement of money of 8% a year to a debasement of 12 or 14% a year. And that's pretty ugly.
Yeah. Okay, so when you look at the scenarios that are playing out right now in DC, and many would say, well, you know, DOGE is really starting to dig into some issues that may affect financial markets. The SEC is one. They're talking about doing an audit to the SEC. If they were to find something bad, as they have found in some other agencies within the government, would that in itself be good for crypto? Would that be one of those things, the whole, you know, effing system is broken and we need to kind of reset? What are your thoughts there of how much this, it's almost like, do we really want to know?
Look,
of what
we might not want to know as people because it's ugly.
Yeah.
But if we're participants in crypto markets, we've built this parallel financial system. I've been in this space since 2013, pushing this narrative forward. This is a parallel system that solves a lot of the issues that we've got.
Yeah.
So we get a immutable source of truth for all forms of information, whether it's the government finances or who owns the security, whatever it may be. And so it is obvious that a source of immutable truth is better than a concealed lie driven by a bureaucratic machine of the government. So I think over time, it can only be positive. It really can.
Well, and you look at, I was looking at just where they are right now, about almost 50 billion in terms of tax dollars saved. And this is just the first 30 days or so. I mean, what's the potential here of a blockchain truly being used around the government ecosystem? And if so, what would you suggest if you had Elon's ear right now? What would you say? Hey, let's do a variety of blockchains for different, you know, scenarios. How would you play it?
Probably a variety of blockchains, just because it's net good for the United States. You know, you don't want to be a maximalist at government level because it's too important. But certainly, things that need to be truthy can get truthier very quickly. Economic data is one, right? There's always the argument, and has been for as long as I've been in markets, economic data is manipulated. Well, once you put it on chain, it can't be. It's provably so. So we can do it with that. We can do it with spending. We can do it with budgets. All of this can go on blockchain. Now, let's see how brave they actually get versus what they say. But I think economic data might be. But there again, Trump might say, fuck that. I actually just want to massage the data myself. So people say they want truth, but it's not always clear that they do.
Well, that's something that I think a lot of people, even though at the same time, I mean, you look at what David Sachs has been able to do so far, I would say has been somewhat, you know, positive, even though I think a lot of people were looking at the fact that you can get, you know, across the aisle talking to each other about the future of blockchain. That's an achievement. What are your thoughts in reference to what he's going to announce this week, which could be just around the corner? Something big in digital assets coming soon.
The answer is we don't know yet. We know they've got a lot of work. We've heard that the whole working group fell apart because typical of crypto, nobody can agree with each other. It's like, so, you know, roll your eyes with like embarrassment about how bad this space can be. But that's where we got to. And Trump's like, I've had enough of all of you, get out. Let's start this. Now, David Sachs is a smart guy. He's got the ear of Mark Andreessen. They kind of, you know, there's a lot of smart people around the space who understand digital assets. We know we've got to get stablecoin regulations first. That's what they've talked about. So that's a big one because it's a large bar of US debt. So they want that. Then we've just got to get the general framework, and then we've got the strategic reserve. It's all going to come, but it is going to take time. You know, David Sachs has got the enviable position of trying to figure out some regulation for AI, which is much harder than crypto to figure out because we've got something much larger in terms of humanity scale impact. So look, they've got a lot of work to do, but we need something at some point soon that starts laying foundations. I think the first thing would be stablecoins.
All right, so stablecoins kind of leading it, potentially maybe going into some sort of government organization in terms of a blockchain launch would be pretty significant.
Yeah, or deciding who regulates this stuff. CFTC,
yeah, exactly.
SEC. Yeah. You know, it's just some of those, a bit of clarity of direction of, okay, this is how we're thinking about it, and this is what we're going to do. We don't need the full final, wording. It's like, it's going to the CFTC, it's going to be a thing, unless it is proven to be a security, which will be an SEC thing, and this is how we're going to deal with it as a different type of asset class.
How much of an impact do you think that would have on this, we'll call it this cycle, and then I want to ask you, do you believe this cycle even exists anymore, the idea of how cycles have run in the past?
Yes, I think it's a big deal for this cycle, because when I speak to institutions, both from the investment side or those that want to build on blockchain rails, this clarity is desperately needed, desperately needed. Now, they kind of are moving forwards because they know it will be pretty liberal now going forwards in how we can use this technology, but it's still not easy enough for corporations to do this with ease. So look, it's a very big deal. It will bring in much larger check sizes from much larger players over time. So yes, for this cycle. In terms of cycles, unless the US government manages to pay off all its debt in one go, we're in this cycle. It's been the same repeating 4-year cycle. It's driven by the debt refinance cycle. It's a global cycle. There is no way around that because of the aging population and the debts that we have. So the only thing is, will this cycle morph it somewhat? Of course, they all do. Like the last cycle peaked really early. Why? Because the business cycle peaked early. In March 2021, the business cycle and liquidity peaked. When we go to 2017, liquidity in the business cycle peaked right at the back end of the year, and then it had a blow off top. 2013 was similar. So the last time around was actually the abnormality, and there's always going to be an abnormality. So what is the one most likely to happen this time? Well, if the crypto markets and liquidity peak when the business cycle peaks, and we'll use the ISM survey, the Institute Supply Managers survey, as our proxy for that, we've only just bottomed and we're breaking 50 to the upside. And that's going to take several months or a year or so to get there. So probabilistically speaking, it might push it into 2026. So that's something we'd have to get our heads around, is actually it goes a bit longer than we imagined. So that's what I'm thinking about this cycle. Then we've got to think, okay, is the downside going to be the same? Because we've got new players, we've got ETFs, we've got different stuff. People can put Bitcoin in their 401k. And I would argue we probably have less downside. Bitcoin's downside has been less each cycle. So maybe it's down 50 or down 45 this cycle versus NASDAQ would be down 20, let's say. That would make sense. Now, a whole bunch of everything else will go down 99% or 95%. But what we'll see is the majors going down less than previous cycles. I think that's my most likely outcome. And so it can catch people off guard, because if people are waiting for the bottom of a cycle in 2026 and it's more of a sloppy sideways range and everyone's expecting it to go lower, you can end up having this whole mess where you're very bullish, but you don't own anything. So I think let's see how it plays out. But I think it's going to be, it'll always be different. I'm just trying to figure out where it's going to be different. It's definitely not going to be a short cycle, because we've only just started the liquidity cycle. We've only just started the business cycle. So it won't be short. Will it be towards the back end of the year, which would be normal? Or could it be back into 2026? And then what does 26 look like? Maybe less frantic than the last cycle, which we saw a lot of collapses and a lot of things going horribly wrong. But you've got to remember how money works in the economy. Right now, there's all of these pension plans and all of these private equity funds and all these VC funds. They've had no exits. Nothing has gone public. Things like Stripe, still not public. In the crypto land, Circle, still not public. Kraken, still not public. So that we need to see the capital markets open. We need to see money get recycled, and then money can move through the system. So that's one of the issues. So a lot of the crypto-based investments is from the crypto market that releases as the capital goes higher. But of the traditional investors, there's still not enough money. So we're having to bring in new capital, and that might be the Middle East or a couple of others. But we're not getting the traditional investors fully involved. They just don't have money right now. And that's a function of what I talk about when I talk about the business cycle. The business cycle, if you think about it, when the business cycle is expanding, it means people have more earnings. whether it's at household levels or corporation levels. Those profits and earnings get recycled into investments. And that's what drives a lot of this. So we're still at this point where we don't have everything in place to have a massive institutional involvement, but we are definitely seeing signs of it. Once we get the regulatory clarity as well, just a basic guideline, it'll accelerate further. So I only see acceleration ahead, but it just takes time.
Yeah, and I think everybody's been panicking a little bit in terms of what they've been watching here in this last 60, 90 days. But to your point, zoom out, people start to realize really what this means overall.
Really, you see a lot of it's easy to get caught up in YouTube channels or Twitter or whatever. And when you step back, has anything really happened? I mean, Bitcoin's barely consolidated, barely. And people, because everybody's hopes and dreams are in this trade, right? This is I call it the greatest macro opportunity of all time, or greatest macro trade of all time, but also most of us have most of our wealth in this trade. So it matters. So people are going to be incredibly emotional about this, because if we get through the other side and you do the right things and you don't fuck it up, you can make a lot of money.
Yep.
And so they think about their future self and they're terrified of not getting there. I get it. It's just stick with the program and just be careful and just be patient.
Well, I like your theory in the sense of these business cycles, especially when you go back and look at 2021, because many people are so glued to that cycle that they believe, well, it's a timing thing versus a macroeconomic impact thing that starts to move the market. So I totally agree with you there.
I mean, it is all macro, Paul, and most people don't understand it. I spend a lot of my time trying to educate people. It's actually the macro drives everything.
Sure.
And we think, technical analysis, stuff like that, it's useful to know where you are in a trend and what's happening and strength and stuff. But really, the whole thing is driven by macro.
Oh, totally. Let's flip over to gaming real quick. I want to play a clip because we had Yatsu from Animoca Brands on here just recently. And he was talking about something specifically to a major launch of a game, which could have an impact on how AI agents are possibly getting their breakout, which could be in gaming. Let me play that clip for you.
It was great news on the earnings. You had a smaller than expected loss, but I think the reason the stock took off is because you said, Grand Theft Auto 6 is still on track. Where do things stand? What's going on?
We're doing what we've been doing since the very beginning.
I think it's going to trigger a general gaming bull run. Take-Two has filed a few interesting AI patents for gaming. What's the other big thing that's happening this year is Nintendo Switch 2. These two triggers are all happening this year, right?
And the impact that someone like Aiden Ross could bring to this. Do you think they'll let this slide?
Take-Two is an American company.
Yep.
Guess who's president of America at the moment in time? Now, even if they don't, it's going to create the kind of sort of negative backlash they may have to reconsider, especially because there's potential political implications. I would argue GTA is, of course, an edgy game. And I would argue that GTA 6 is perhaps the largest cultural sort of moment. It's going to be bigger than, it's like the Star Wars or the Marvel Avengers of this year type of thing.
All right, so Yatsu there talking about this game event possibly having the biggest impact potentially of where we could see things like AI agents and or crypto becoming a real thing. We had referenced Aiden Ross because he's talking about integration, even though we may not necessarily get that to be a reality, but someone that big that has such a cultural connection, do you think that could truly start to kick off Web3 gaming?
I'm not sure Grand Theft Auto will have any Web3 elements in it. But what I do know is there are so many big grade A games being built on blockchain rails across many ecosystems. And as I said, Off the Grid on Avalanche was the first kind of big one. But I know Sui have a lot coming. I'm sure Solana do too. I'm sure there's stuff on EVM. So we will see this, and it's definitely something everyone's working on. The issue is like a big movie. These things are hugely expensive. Most of them don't even make it to market in the end. So they just destroy the capital, never get there. The cycle of building one of these games is kind of 5 years.
Yeah.
Or 4 years. You can see from Grand Theft Auto, it's actually matches the business cycle every time, and it tends to come out at the end of the cycle. So it takes 4 years to build a game of that magnitude with infinite resources that they've got. So you can see how difficult it is for an investment cycle as well. It's the investments that went in 2020 and 2021 that are going to become games now. Many of them blew up and ran out of money in 2022, 2023. So we'll see. But from what I know, from speaking to everybody across the industry, there is a lot coming. But like a film, just having a big budget film doesn't mean it's a box office success. Mm-hmm. So that's the next thing. We need a true box office success.
Big one. Yeah. Well, and I think when you look at just handheld gaming in general, Sui is out there getting ready to launch with their SuiPlay. The interesting thing I was looking at right here, Raoul, I don't know if you saw this, but this was the original design right there. And then they transitioned into this new design, and man, it is so simple. Even the button triggers and the controls are the same as the Switch. So very intriguing, you know, in the sense that of being able to go after modern day Gen Z gamers, which most likely would go this direction. And then you have the potential here, of course, going in. And then you look at just what's happening with Japan in terms of Sony, which is also another factor playing into this. Let me kind of zoom in on that right there. And I mean, with all this happening, is this potentially a blind spot that could be coming at us right now in terms of Web3 gaming in general?
Yeah, I think, look, Sui's the right step. Building hardware is very difficult, which is why I think the original design, I mean, obviously I'm on the foundation of Sui, so I know some of this stuff. And, you know, building hardware is very hard. But getting a Web3 handset to 10,000 people to start with, getting people to use it is the same as the Solana phone idea. Yeah. You know, before you know it, you're getting airdrops for doing it, you're participating in Web3 gaming, and it starts building an ecosystem. But again, it's all around this same idea that gaming is one of the single largest use cases of the internet. And so we're talking, you know, 1 billion people, 500 million people. These are very, very big cohorts of people that would benefit from Web3. So it's obvious they're going to keep going after this.
Let's flip over to XRP. Doppler Finance announced we started to see basically DeFi on XRP. The potential here is pretty significant. They just had their second batch now come out, so their total value around 2 million. So it has launched, XRP DeFi. So what are your thoughts on this? Any implications as to how XRP does in the market overall? Do we still see upside here for XRP?
The more that's built on top of XRP. So XRP is in an exalted situation because there's a lot of holders. But the activity was, you know, A, under pressure because of under lawsuits.
Yep.
And B, a lot of it was the potential of how much can we use for stuff. And there is a reasonable amount of use of the XRP ledger. But if you're starting to build new applications like DeFi on top, you're only going to build value in Metcalfe's law terms, which is network value. So it can only be a net positive if people start to use it, because there's a lot of users, there's not enough things they can do with their XRP. So we've had some memes on XRP, that was a use case, more DeFi on XRP, more use case. Then you've got something much bigger than the original thing. So, you know, for me, all blockchain's about proving yourself and proving network value by building value. And if they can do that, good for them.
Yeah, I'm looking at XRPL right there. You can kind of see the flow in terms of where it's been able to go in a short period of time. But it's still early, like you said. You know, we just started to see, you know, XRP's stablecoins start to get market share here recently, even though it's been climbing, which is pretty significant. But again, back to your point, you need some exposure. Are you following the TikTok moves right now in terms of what's happening with TikTok in the US?
Yeah.
So Frank McCourt, who is leading a group with Kevin O'Leary, is looking at a potential acquisition. And they're tied directly into possibly using Polkadot as the base chain to maybe launch within a US version of TikTok. Do you have any theory as to whether or not that could possibly happen down the road?
There's going to be a fight for TikTok. And the fight is because it's all about AI, feeding the AI content. It's the reason Elon bought X. It wasn't about freedom of speech. It was about, we need the broadest number of views of humanity on this platform that I can scrape the AI for to create robots that can speak and live with me in my household. So TikTok is a very exalted asset. Not only does it have great AI algorithms itself, but the sheer amount of facial imagery, human movement, human voice is very valuable. So I don't know who's going to get this, but it's going to be a political agreement who's going to get it.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be somebody, it could be Microsoft, it could be, I don't know. I would doubt if Kevin O'Leary and a group of others will get it against that, because people know it's a very crucial asset.
Yeah,
I mean, Elon will get it. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah. Well, right now it's Oracle kind of leading the way. Larry Ellison, Microsoft, probably your number 3 right there. And then there's Frank at 16%. This is on Polymarket for you guys to see kind of the trading behind it. But even Bobby Kotick is in there as well. Now, Mr. Beast is also part of the Frank McCourt group. So that in itself, intriguing as to where this goes. Last question to you, Raoul. I've got to ask this because our audience would never let me get away without it, and that is, what are your picks, your portfolio picks for the rest of the year?
So using my don't fuck this up thesis, which is just 90% of your portfolio in the majors.
Yeah.
You can do what you want with 10%. You will probably lose money with those. I hope you get the 100x or 1000x, but you won't. So enjoy that. Just stick with what you're doing. My current allocation is I'm now more overweight SUI than I am Solana. Those are my 2 majors. I own a very small amount of Bitcoin that I've always had, and then I have ETH, which is only in high-end art NFTs. So I don't own any ETH other than art. Really, my focus bet is SUI with a little bit of Solana now. That's flipped because I was the other way around. I was 80% Solana and 20% SUI, and I'm kind of flipping those around and looking to move even more towards SUI because I think it outperforms this cycle.
Yeah, so your thesis is just the performance of it itself. It's the younger project, much like what Solana was in the last one.
And ETH the cycle before. It's just
exactly,
simple as that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the new kid.
It's, and it's not, people will say watching this, well, he's biased because he's on the board. No, I mean, yes, I get granted tokens from the board. They're all locked up. I don't do anything. My actual capital, I'm a mercenary for, and my job is to maximize the returns in the safest possible way. And I have, over time, been allocating to SUI based on not only what you read, the fundamentals and what is happening, and the on-chain activity, but also just the price action versus Solana and Bitcoin and ETH. And it's like, it looks good.
Yeah, for sure. Raoul, it's been good having you on. Thank you so much. We got to get you back on as the market heats up over the next few months, which I think it's going to. So good to have you, and thanks again for stopping in. We appreciate it.
Yeah, hopefully people don't get too bored or too deranged in a sloppy market.
They'll love it.
Go away, do something else, and before you know it, everything will be fine. Liquidity is coming.
Exactly. All right, thanks for coming in. All right,
Thanks,
you guys.
Paul.
You bet. All right, guys, make sure and jump in on the Diamond Circle. It's our own private group. And of course, you can also get in on our Telegram group as well. It's very easy. That's where I kind of spend a little bit of my time chatting with you guys. So we leave a link down below, so check it out. It's very easy to set up. And of course, follow me out there on X, just @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.